So here is the BMW 220i. I've had this for a few weeks now, and I'm here at Cafe in the Machine on a Sunday morning, because if a car doesn't get you up on a Sunday morning to go for a drive, it isn't a car you want to drive. That's pretty self-explanatory, isn't it? Just quickly, because I did my first drive review video of the 220i, and I was really impressed with it, but I wanted to spend a bit more time with it just to kind of get under the skin of it a bit more and see if I was right, or are there things that have cropped up that don't necessarily agree with me in the kind of time that I've owned, or not owned, had the car from BMW, because I think its styling looks really, really good from all angles other than the rear, as you guys know. It is in a lovely red. We do have the 19-inch wheels, and if you didn't watch my first drive video, this is 184 brake horsepower. It has 300 newton meters of torque. It costs £38,000 because it does have comfort and tech pack. It will do 0 to 62 miles per hour in 7.5 seconds, 300 newton meters of torque, and 146 miles per hour top speed. It is running the 8-speed ZF gearbox, and the engine itself is the B48. The B48 engine is the one that we find in the M135i, although this is detuned. Do I wish we had a bit more power? Yes, and that is the most important topic. But before we get into that, let's go and get some breakfast, because I'm kind of hungry. Cafe in the Machine do decent coffee, that I will say. One of the reasons I wanted to get out today, not only is it of course because I wanted to film this video, because I've had the 220i for a while, but more so because if you are a bit of a petrol head and you do enjoy driving, you have to have a car, and I said earlier on, you have to have a car that you enjoy driving. You have to have a car that wants you to get out of bed at 6 a.m. on a Sunday, like I've done today, and get in it, drive it down to somewhere that you enjoy, like Cafe in the Machine, which is what I do, and give you the fulfillment that you are having fun in a car. It doesn't necessarily need to give you that brutality that you get from an extreme performance car, but you have to have some fun in it. So what have I learned about the car? What have I learned about the 220i in my time of driving it? Driving dynamics have been really good. I've really enjoyed it driving down these kind of twisty roads here in the countryside in the Cotswolds. And that for me is really, really important, because if you can't enjoy driving the car, then what's the point in having it? Yes, there's an argument to say the 220i is a mass market car and more people will want it just as a daily run around because it looks nice, it gives you the luxury that you would want from BMW, but there is a question around if it's fun to drive, and I can guarantee you that it is. There are some negatives about the car that I've kind of learned, and some of them a little disappointing from BMW, and I'll touch on those now. The first of which is that the car is a brand new car, yet we're already seeing condensation in the headlights, which, for people who've got older cars will know that's a really annoying thing. You can clean the lenses on the headlights, but you still see condensation, which isn't ideal. And also, even sometimes on cold days, when I start demisting the windscreen, I get some condensation and water droplets falling down the inside of the windscreen, which isn't great considering the fact this is German build quality. The other part, we'll touch on it a bit more when I get in the car, is the power. I have started to feel it a little bit now. When I did my first drive video, it was more of a, you can get by with it, whereas now I found myself just wanting more power. But that's me personally. That might not necessarily be the case for everybody who buys the car. The driving modes were quite interesting as well. I found that the comfort mode in the car is actually quite lazy with the ZF gearbox. Every now and again, if you want to kind of give a little bit of punch, it kind of finds itself in the wrong gear, and you have to really put your foot to the floor to get a downshift or, like a kick down. So what I found with the car is if you leave it in sport mode, but leave it in like sport mode drive, it still gives you all the economy. It doesn't hold the gears very long. And if you slap it into sport, when you slap the gear stick to the left, that's where it holds the gear. So I think that is the better driving mode. And what I found is I have left it in sport mode for the majority of the time I've had it. Other things that I really like about the car is just how comfortable it is. And even though it's a passive suspension setup, it is really, really good. But what we'll do, we'll finish my coffee and we'll continue in the car. Right, I'm refueled, I'm coffeeed up. I'm good to go. It is the end of January here at Caffeine in the Machine, so there aren't that many people about other than the dedicated. And hats off to the dedicated, because it is cold out there. There's quite a few BMWs floating around as well. Interestingly, this car got quite a lot of attention, and I think it got more attention than it would have got had people not have seen the badge on the back of the car. And I think that goes back to the kind of styling. Just sorry, mate, just walk straight out, it's fine. And I think it kind of goes back to the overall styling of the car, and why it is such a good all-round proposition is there is an awful lot of kind of design cues and similarities between this and the 240i xDrive, and unless you really know your BMWs, you're not necessarily going to know which is what. So people are quite intrigued, they're quite curious by this car, and I found that over the kind of term of the loan, and wherever I park it, it does draw quite a lot of heads, which, well, I guess is a good thing, isn't it? Because, you know, if you've got vanity in you and you want people to like your car, then, well, at least you're ticking that box. So for the majority of driving, and I would say what, 85% of driving, the power that you get in this car is more than you'll ever need. It's just a great car to drive around in. I really enjoy it. You know, it gets up to speed, it gets up to the speed limit decent. You know, it's not groundbreaking performance. And I touched earlier on about me wanting that little bit more, and as time's gone on with the car, I have lusted for a tiny bit more power. And I'll just quickly give you an example. If I just pop it down, slow it down, there's no one behind me, stick it in, first gear. It gives you a nice little bit of grunt low down, but it leaves you wanting more as it dies out towards the top end. That said, look, if you ever bought one of these cars, a little remap would do wonders for this thing. I know BMW won't like me telling you that, but that's the reality. I think a little remap in this car would do it absolute wonders. Handling on this thing it's really good. It's so dynamically capable, and like I've said in my first drive video, you don't have enough power to really get yourself into trouble with this thing. It is a fun little car to drive, this. You know, once you get it up to speed, yeah, it's good. I've really enjoyed it. And the other thing with this car as well, yes, you know, from a dynamics perspective, it is really, really nice to drive. But also because of it being a 220i, I'm averaging around 42 miles to the gallon, which again is a really good thing. You know, if you, again, for the mass market, high selling entry level 2 series, that's exactly what you're going to want. And it's been really, really fun. I like it. And you've got to ask yourself the question nowadays as well is, you know, in this day and age with average speed cameras everywhere, are you really going to get full fulfillment out of a really high performance BMW? I mean, someone like me, yes, of course I would, but for the majority of people, would they? I'm not necessarily sure. And the other thing, you know, things like the driving assists that come on this car, they're all very decent. You know, it doesn't have the level 2 autonomous driving, which I think that would really top it off in this car. You get that on the 240i, you haven't got that in this. I think it's an optional extra that you can go for. I've got the lane assist, I've got cruise control. You know, as an all-round car, it pretty much ticks every single box. I do get Harman Kardon sound system as well, which, you know, let's be honest, the engine noise in this car isn't the greatest noise in the world. It's not a 6-cylinder lump. So having decent sound for your sound system will help you drone some of that out, because the kind of fake enhanced noise in here in sport mode is all right. You know, it's not the end of the world, but that B48 just doesn't sound very fruity. That said, you know, and I say that suspension, the way this whole package sits together as a dynamic drive is really good, and I've really enjoyed my time with it. I think as an all-round car that does pretty much everything other than break the land speed record, you can't really go wrong. genuinely. And I think for the money, 38,000, yes, it's a lot of money, but all new cars are just through the roof. They all cost you a hell of a load of money. And I think that it's got enough options for you to be happy with it. It's got enough character and fun for you to take it out like I've done and enjoy a Sunday drive in and amongst your daily use, you know, what you would buy it for, the daily commute. So it does tick that box as well. Could you road trip one of these? Easy, and I think you'd have good fun in it. My only issue with this car, and again, this is predominantly more to kind of someone like myself or a bit more of an avid petrol head that wants to get the most out of their car, you will at some point be lusting for more power, particularly at the top end. And I do think a remap wouldn't do it a bad thing. See, it's a bit lazy there. But once it gets going, it chugs on, and that's all you need. Look, I'm not going to bang on about this too much because I think I've had it for a while. There's more detail in my first drive review video as well. The handling of this car for what it is really good. It is really good. And because it isn't the quickest thing in the world, it's very forgiving as well. You know, even with the traction control off, it's quite controllable. You're not going to end up facing a ditch. I mean, it will do that. You need to be mindful of it, particularly in the wet and greasy conditions like this. But as a whole, I like this car. I really do.